how can track and field do a better job of getting out to the masses and just more exposure? I mean, what do you think is a way to get that to happen?
Yeah, but I think we need to get ahead of the game, right? The viewership has been changing tremendously through the years, and it seems like we're always a half step behind. And even when I started the American Track League, streaming really wasn't a thing. It barely was 11 years ago, right? And look how far we've come in essentially a decade. But even I look back to 2 years ago, when we were on ESPN, being on ESPN was the best thing for the sport, right? We had Heather McLean, one of my 1,500 meter runners from New Balance Olympian, Heather, came to one of our meets and ran the 800. And then she got a direct message on Instagram after from some kid that went to Penn State. And he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I was in our dining hall and your race came on TV and I got the whole dining hall to cheer for you and you won. It was awesome." Like they said the whole dining hall at Penn State was going nuts for Heather McLean. And that's only because it was on ESPN, right? ESPN linear TV is in every single sports bar in America. It's in dining halls at Penn State. It's on, it's basically everywhere. And that is what makes our sport to reach outside of the typical fan base. What we're doing this year with the American Track League is giving it to all the fans, but that's not helping us necessarily draw new fans into the sport. It's just satisfying our current fans. So we've got to figure out a way to reach out to the outside force. And of course, this year being an Olympic year, 4 years from now, we have an Olympics in the US. This is our prime opportunity to get exposure for the sport, because everyone's going to want a piece of it over the next 4 years until the LA Games. So this is when we really have to capitalize and start promoting the athletes and promoting the sport. So making it accessible and getting exposure is the big thing. We cannot be short-sighted and take small money to get to get small money for the rights to the viewership. We need to look at the biggest viewership possible. And that's, if you look at the case I always bring up is Wimbledon tennis tournament. So Wimbledon tennis tournament has always been on British Broadcasting, the BBC, for years and years and years. And Sky Sports came in, which was a cable station that was, a subscription service that came on to TVs all across the UK and Ireland, all that. And Sky Sports came in and offered Wimbledon 3 times the amount of money that the BBC was paying them. And they turned it down. And that was the best move they ever could have made, because if they'd done the Sky Sports deal at the time, they would have gone from being in 40 million households in the UK to 20,000. And then their sponsors would have went away because they would have lost the exposure. And that, to me, is what the problem we have with track and field is, where we're behind paywalls and we're limiting people getting access to our sport. It's like we're trying to keep the sport secret and only give it to the few people that are willing to pay a few pennies for it, right? Whereas what we really should be doing is just getting exposure for the sport and getting exposure for our athletes and making their names well known.